Hey friends, I think I'm working out my new camera, which is really fun. And for this video, I'd like to talk about the value of positive future narratives. And this is something that I've been grappling with a lot. And is actually what I first started out writing about. When I first came to Substack, Twitter, all that kind of stuff, it was very much in the kind of optimistic futures, optimistic narratives perspective, which has kind of become a bit stuck for me. And I want to rekindle it somewhat. So I should give some context for this in that I grew up watching Star Trek. That was my show. And what I loved about that was that it really gave something aspirational that was worth going to the future for, right? I've never been, I enjoy dystopian fiction, but I also enjoy the utopian versions as well, and I enjoy a multiplicity of them in particular. I'm not someone who thinks the world has to be the way that it is described in the story, right? We need to get to this kind of future. But there's real value in exploring as many different futures as possible where things could be good. Because I think that we're really organized as humans by things that we want rather than things that we don't want. A classic example of this is the child cycling into a tree, right? You get what you focus on is, I guess, the simplest way of phrasing this. So when a child's learning to ride a bike, there could be a single tree in the entire field that they're cycling in. And if they're focused on the tree, even in the kind of don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree kind of way, they're going to hit the tree, right? Because for whatever reason, when we set some kind of target, even if it's a not target, our mind doesn't really know the difference, I think, between yes and not yes. It's still just that thing. And there's obviously a non-doing angle here separately, but this is not that conversation. So I worry a little bit that when we define human advancement in terms of let's avoid climate change or let's not have that bad thing happen, all our collective unconsciouses are hearing is the bad thing, right? There's no sense of yes, we want that, or no, we don't want that. It's just the thing, the tree. Look where you want to go. If we're all looking at something we don't want, I think we're going to end up unintentionally organizing ourselves in the direction of going in towards the thing we don't want. So this is where the value of optimistic narratives comes in, and having lots of them. Because if I can imagine a world where we have deployed carbon removal at scale, we have a renewable energy system that's power, solar, some nuclear, it's great, it's very clean, awesome. We have universal basic income, so we've solved employment and maximized human creativity, we're exploring and colonizing Mars. All of these things can be possible, right? But I don't need them to be the case. I'm not saying that we will have failed if we don't achieve all of these things, but that there are different ways that it's possible for the future to be better than it is today, and that these are things that we can work towards. The reason I think having multiplicity of these is important is that as soon as we care too much about achieving any single one, I think we stifle not just creativity, but we also block out the option for things to be better or different than that. So if we say that, well, we must have this kind of political structure for humans to be happy, so for future to be better than it is today. And different people argue for different things. But if we find on the way that actually there are better ways, then we'll block those off by not allowing ourselves to really engage with that. We'll kind of know we're going in that direction. We're kind of overly focused on that thing, so you just miss the thing over here. That's one reason. But I also think, this is kind of the more non-doing side of things, I also really think that when you care too much about something, you interfere with the process that actually does things. So if it's really, like the example I use is quite basic from my Alexander technique training, playing catch. If I'm throwing a ball and I really, really, really care, it's important to me that I catch the ball, I'm going to interfere with myself. I'm going to be going like organizing my body, like, oh, okay. And I'm going to get worse at catching the ball, right? Because the part of me that catches the ball is not the part of me that gives instructions to me and cares that it's important to catch the ball. If I can step back enough and be almost indifferent about catching the ball, it's totally fine if I drop the ball. And yet I'm going to intend to catch the ball, then my hand just goes there. My hand just reaches out in a way that is far more elegant, effortless, and accurate than anything, quote unquote, I could have done. Now, I really wonder if that's something that expands out to the civilizational, societal scale, right? So if we can all collectively hold the paradox that we don't have to, that, you know, it's okay if we don't, and yet we also intend clearly to aim for one of the many positive futures, that by doing that we'll unlock the more creative, innately powerful and competent parts of ourselves as a society, as a species, that we can unlock in ourselves individually by doing practices like that. And I think that could lead to better outcomes. Now, this is clearly not a well thought through position. There are obvious counters to this, and I'm working through them. But this is one angle on the value of positive narratives in acting as an organizing principle for the parts of our collective selves that will achieve results in those directions. I guess that's the most articulate way I can say it right now. And the reason to have many of them is because it helps release that sense of caring, right? If there's a good outcome in that direction and a good outcome in that direction, and our job is just to move forwards, then I think we'll land somewhere that is good, and we'll unlock capacity for generative ideas, but for a kind of collective authenticity, if you like, rather than any one faction's view of what good is. And I think that's important. So I'll leave it there. Slightly more wacky one possibly, but I'll be curious if there are any takes out there on what I've just said. So thank you.